You have felt it. The moment when discipline collapses, when the plan breaks and you negotiate with your own weakness instead of commanding it. Most men believe that failure is a character flaw, a gap in willpower, a deficiency you were born with. That belief is the first and most expensive lie you will ever tell yourself. Hannibal Barca crossed the Alps, won Cannae, and held 16 years of war together without resupply or reinforcement. Not through superior willpower, but through a system, a machine with 5 distinct parts, engineered to make collapse structurally impossible. Today, we build that machine. Most people look at Hannibal Barca and see a general, a tactician, a man who crossed the Alps with war elephants and made Rome bleed for 16 unbroken years. They study his battles, Trebia, Trasimene, Cannae, catalog his formations, and call the result genius. That story is comfortable. It lets smaller men believe the distance between themselves and Hannibal is talent, not architecture. It keeps his system safely out of reach by labeling it a gift rather than a design. But Hannibal Barca was not a gift from history. He was a machine, assembled deliberately, calibrated with precision, and operated without sentiment. Everything he achieved flowed from 5 governing principles he encoded into his decisions long before the first battle was ever fought. Today, we take that machine apart. The first principle is what we will call the oath architecture, the doctrine that a man without a sworn, immovable purpose is not a strategist. He is a participant. And participants do not survive the Alps in November. When Hannibal was 9 years old, he watched his father, Hannibal Barca, prepare to sail from Carthage to campaign in Spain. The boy begged to come. Hamilcar did not refuse immediately. He asked one question: would Hannibal swear eternal enmity to Rome? Not preference, not ambition, an oath before the gods. The child placed his hand on the altar and swore. Historians debate the theatrical details, whether the altar was elaborate, whether the exact words have survived precisely. But the oath itself is documented in ancient sources, and the 40 years that followed were its verification. He crossed the Pyrenees. He crossed the Alps in late autumn, losing nearly half his army to cold, rock slides, and tribal ambush. He fought Rome on Italian soil for 16 years without reinforcement from Carthage, without a secured supply line, without a permanent base of operations. He won engagements against forces that outweighed him numerically on every significant occasion. He never broke the oath, not once in 16 years. This is the oath architecture, the understanding that purpose must be made structurally non-negotiable before the conditions that will test it ever arrive. Psychology identifies this mechanism as implementation intention. When you pre-commit a decision during a moment of calm clarity, you eliminate the deliberation cost from every future moment of pressure and fatigue. Hannibal did not reevaluate each morning whether to continue fighting Rome. He decided once, at 9, at an altar, and the decision ran the machine automatically for decades. What most men call discipline is actually daily renegotiation, a constant internal negotiation between the version of themselves who swore and the version who is exhausted and looking for a reasonable exit. Hannibal removed the negotiation entirely. The structure made the choice automatic. The mechanism is exact and transferable. Identify the purpose that deserves the altar, reduce it to language that cannot be conditionally unpacked, state it in absolute terms. Then burn every hedge out of the formulation. A purpose that survives only in favorable conditions is not a purpose. It is a preference wearing the language of purpose as camouflage. The average man forms preferences. He builds directions that dissolve at the first obstacle he failed to predict. The strategist forms oaths, binding contracts signed in clarity, enforced by identity, audited by every action that follows without exception. But an oath aimed at the wrong terrain is not discipline. It is catastrophe, well-directed catastrophe, but catastrophe nonetheless. And that is exactly why the second principle must be understood before the first campaign is drawn. The second principle is the Asymmetry Doctrine. the law that the man who refuses to fight on his enemy's chosen ground has already won half the engagement before a single soldier moves. In 218 BCE, Rome fully expected Hannibal to come by sea, as Carthaginian commanders had always operated, or to hold position in Spain and force Rome to advance into terrain Carthage controlled. What Roman military doctrine had no framework to process was that Hannibal would march overland through southern Gaul, negotiate or fight past the Alpine tribes, and descend into northern Italy in late November. The Alps in late autumn are not a route. They are a killing system. The passes are narrow and irregular. The rock slides are constant, and the cold is a weapon the mountains wield without effort or fatigue. Approximately half of Hannibal's force did not survive the crossing. Nearly all of his famous war elephants died before they ever stood on a Roman battlefield. But Hannibal arrived in Italy, and he arrived from a direction Rome had classified as geometrically impossible. He was not where the legions had been positioned to receive him. He had not asked Rome for permission to choose the field. He chose it unilaterally, and then waited for Rome to react. This is the Asymmetry Doctrine, the law that whoever defines the terrain controls the terms of the engagement. Game theory identifies this as first mover advantage in a repeated conflict structure. By dictating where and when the encounter occurs, you force your opponent into a reactive cognitive posture. And reactive posture is expensive. The mind operating in reaction mode is spending its highest quality processing power on adaptation, not on design. Rome burned through 3 consular armies at Trebia, Trasimene, and Cannae in less than 2 years. Not because Roman soldiers were cowards or Roman generals were fools. They lost because each time the encounter began on ground Hannibal had already surveyed, mapped, and converted into a mechanism for systematic destruction. He brought Rome to his field on his terms, in his timing. The mechanism for you is one diagnostic question, applied before any significant conflict in any arena, whose terrain is this. If the answer is not yours, do not engage yet. Relocate the encounter, reframe the conditions, delay until you control the critical variables. You cannot outfight a structurally stronger opponent on the field he has prepared for you. You can almost always outmaneuver him to a field he has never considered, where his preparation is irrelevant and yours is total. The average man enters rooms that others have arranged and operates under conditions others set. The predator arrives first, surveys the room, and rearranges the geometry before anyone else has sat down. But to rearrange the field, you must first see it with total accuracy, stripped of need, stripped of hope, stripped of every story you are emotionally invested in being true. That requires the third principle. The third principle is cold information, the ruthless discipline of separating what is verifiably true from what you are emotionally invested in believing. 217 BCE, Lake Trasimene in central Italy. Hannibal executed a deception that appears almost crude in hindsight because it required no elaborate mechanism. It required only the accurate prediction that his enemy would deceive himself. Hannibal sent his Numidian cavalry ahead along the road, visible fast, apparently retreating southward. The Roman consul Gaius Flaminius was aggressive, politically pressured, and in public need of a decisive victory. He had been criticized for caution in prior engagements. He pursued the cavalry without adequate reconnaissance into a fog. Covered valley corridor beside the lake in the early morning hours. The valley floor was long and narrow, the lake ceiling one flank, hills rising steeply on the other. Hannibal had positioned his infantry in the hillside scrubbed the night before, silent, waiting in 3 distinct forces. When the Roman column filled the valley floor, the hillside erupted simultaneously from above. The trap closed from 3 directions. 15,000 Romans died in less than 3 hours. Flaminius was killed in the fighting. The Roman army was not outfought by superior force. It was handed precisely the story it most wanted to believe: retreating enemy, open ground, available glory, and it marched, step by deliberate step, into the mechanism. This is cold information, what the Stoics called the discipline of impression. the trained practice of interrogating every perception before acting on it, separating the raw observable fact from the interpretive layer that desire has already painted across it. Marcus Aurelius would codify this principle directly. The obstacle to perception is not the absence of information. It is the presence of a conclusion arrived at before the evidence was examined. Most intelligence failures in history are not failures of data. The information was usually available and accessible. They are failures of interpretation, produced by motivated reasoning, the cognitive pattern that filters incoming evidence through the conclusion the observer has already decided he needs to reach. The mechanism for you is a two-step diagnostic before any consequential decision. First, what do I currently believe is true here? Second, what would need to be true for this decision to feel correct? If those two answers point identically in the direction your desire already runs, you are not reading reality. You are reading your own emotional stake and calling it analysis. Stop. Invert the frame. Search deliberately and with effort for what would falsify your preferred conclusion. Spend on that search the same energy you would normally spend building the case for your existing position. The average man reads the battlefield he wants to exist and moves accordingly, then calls the outcome bad luck. The predator maps the battlefield that actually exists in cold detail before committing a single resource. Cold perception tells you what the field is. It does not tell you how to allocate force across it. That belongs to the fourth principle. The fourth principle is total resource calculus, the doctrine that the man who masters the distribution of force before battle has already decided the outcome before the first blow lands. Cannae, August 2nd, 216 BCE. The most analyzed battle in Western military history, studied continuously for over 2,000 years and incorporated into military academy curricula across 6 continents. Hannibal faced a consolidated Roman and Allied force of approximately 70,000 soldiers, nearly double his total available strength. Roman strategy was engineered for that numerical advantage. Mass overwhelming force in the center. Press forward on a broad front. Break the opposing line by pure applied weight. Destroy. It was the strategy of a power with abundance. It was the strategy of a system that had never been made to think creatively about the geometry of force. Hannibal placed his weakest infantry, Gallic and Spanish levies of uncertain loyalty and limited training, at the center of his line, forming a crescent bowed outward toward Rome. His elite African veterans, the most disciplined soldiers in his army, he positioned on both flanks, held back, anchored, waiting. When the Roman mass pressed into the Gallic center, the line bent inward. The Gauls retreated while maintaining cohesion, drawing the Roman center forward and deeper. The Roman formation compressed as it advanced, soldiers pressing forward and inward, their own mass becoming a liability. The flanks held fixed, the pocket deepened. Then the African infantry on both flanks turned inward simultaneously and sealed the encirclement completely. 70,000 Roman soldiers were surrounded in an open field. Estimates of Roman dead range from 45 to 50,000 killed in a single afternoon. Hannibal's losses were approximately 6,000. Cannae was not a battle. It was a controlled demolition of an army that could not adapt quickly enough to understand what the geometry was doing to it in real time. This is total resource calculus, the Pareto principle applied not to effort distribution, but to force concentration. The correctly positioned 20% of your available assets generates 80% of the decisive outcome, if and only if the allocation is made before the engagement, not improvised during it. Hannibal did not win Cannae by possessing superior soldiers across the board. He won it by identifying with precision which assets were load-bearing, the African veterans, and which assets were functional levers in a larger engineered system, the Gallic center, and building the entire battle plan around that distinction before the armies were ever in contact. Every element of his force had a specific calibrated function in the mechanism. The weakest troops were not positioned to win their sector. They were positioned to pull. The strongest troops were positioned to close. There was no waste, no sentiment, no misallocation of irreplaceable assets to peripheral roles. The mechanism for you is an inventory. Run quarterly. Map every resource under your control. Financial reserves, cognitive bandwidth, specialized skill depth, relational equity, physical capacity. Identify the 20% of those resources that is generating the substantial majority of meaningful output. Protect those assets as primary. Concentrate the highest quality of your available attention on their development and deployment. Treat everything else as scaffolding, functional, necessary in its role, but never the subject of your best investment. The average man distributes effort evenly across everything he is responsible for, gives equal energy to the critical and the peripheral, and lives in permanent confusion about why the output remains mediocre regardless of total hours invested. The emperor identifies the decisive point and concentrates everything that matters on breaking through it without apology. But a man who wins every engagement and loses the war has not mastered strategy. He has mastered tactics inside a failed philosophy. That error, Hannibal's error, belongs to the fifth and most instructive principle. The fifth principle is structural patience. The doctrine that the system which outlasts its enemy does not need to outfight it. It only needs to remain functional and generative for longer than the enemy can maintain coherent pressure. After Cannae, Rome made a decision that most powers would never make in the immediate aftermath of catastrophic, humiliating defeat. The Senate convened in full, refused to negotiate, refused to ransom the prisoners. Hannibal offered to return and handed supreme command to Quintus Fabius Maximus with a single strategic directive: do not fight Hannibal in the open field. Shadow his army through Italy. Intercept foraging parties. Destroy isolated detachments. Deny him supply convoys. Burn crops before he can requisition them. Hold the walls of every city and refuse pitched battle regardless of how Hannibal maneuvered and positioned to invite it. The Roman people called this cowardice. They shouted the name cunctator, the delayer, at Fabius in the streets of Rome as a public insult. They elected a second commander, Gaius Terentius Varro, precisely because he promised aggressive direct engagement. Varro commanded the Roman army at Cannae. Fabius observed and persisted, because Fabius understood something that 16 consecutive years of Hannibal's battlefield dominance had obscured from virtually everyone watching. Hannibal could not resupply from Carthage. His political faction, the Barcids, had enemies at home in the Carthaginian Senate, who withheld reinforcement and resources as a tool in an internal power struggle. He carried no siege machinery capable of reducing Rome's walls or the walls of major Italian allied cities. He could not convert tactical victory into strategic victory because the physical infrastructure of Roman power, its walls, its allied network, its capacity to continuously train and field new legions from a population Hannibal could devastate but never eliminate, was not a target his tactical genius could reach at all. Hannibal needed Rome to keep presenting itself for destruction on open ground. Fabius denied him the encounter. For years, and Hannibal, for all his operational genius, had no answer for a patient structural system that simply refused to break under pressure or accept his preferred terms of engagement. He was recalled to Carthage. At Zama in 202 BCE, he faced Scipio Africanus, a Roman general who had spent years studying Cannae with cold analytical discipline and had methodically assembled the precise capability required to reverse its mechanism against its inventor. Hannibal lost. Scipio enclosed him, not because Scipio was more brilliant in the abstract, because a more patient Roman structure had outlasted the Carthaginian offensive system and then delivered a commander carrying exactly the tools required to close the account. This is structural patience, the shadow discipline that Jungian psychology identifies as the invisible architecture beneath visible power, the endurance structure that sustains you when the visible fight is prolonged beyond what pure offense can maintain. The shadow is the element of strength. No audience observes in real time, and no opponent can directly attack because it is not visible as a target. It is the financial reserve built during prosperity when no crisis is demanding it. It is the physical infrastructure maintained consistently when no immediate competition requires peak output. It is the skill compounded in silence across years. Unremarkable in any single week, irreplaceable at the moment, it becomes the only remaining asset of value. The mechanism is architectural and parallel. While you run your visible offensive, simultaneously reinforce the structure that sustains your capacity to keep running it. Build reserves they cannot see, and therefore cannot attack. Maintain the endurance infrastructure, even when the current season does not appear to demand it. The war is not decided at the single decisive point of visible contact. It is decided by the system that remains functional and capable across every point of contact, for longer than the opposing system can sustain coherent pressure without breaking. Hannibal was the greatest tactical commander the ancient world produced by any measurable standard available to us. He lost because a patient structural system outlasted his system of perpetual offense. The lesson is not to admire Scipio instead of Hannibal. The lesson is to be both simultaneously, the blade that can win the decisive engagement and the forge that keeps the blade sharpened and funded for 16 years, maintained in silence, built from disciplines that generate no applause and produce no visible result in any given week. Drop every purpose that bends when the conditions become unfavorable. Define your oath before the conditions that will test it ever arrive, at the altar of your own clarity, in a moment of calm. With language that cannot be conditionally negotiated. Adopt cold perception as a daily operating standard. Run the two-step diagnostic. Before every consequential decision, identify the motivated reasoning, strip the story you need to be true from the evidence that is actually present. Build the invisible architecture, the financial reserves, the patient endurance structure, the capacity that compounds below what anyone can observe or price or attack. Start positioning before the battle is declared. On ground you have already surveyed and they have not considered. Refuse engagement under conditions engineered against you. Concentrate your critical assets on the decisive point and treat everything else as scaffolding. Hannibal did not lose because he was outfought on any given field. He lost because he built the blade and neglected the forge. Do not make the same error. Build the forge.